And welcome, students, to our final lesson on conditionals. Today we're going to discuss testing multiple conditions. So what we're going to do is that we're going to look to see if we want to see, for example, if a number is between a range of different things. So take this num1 is less than num2, for example. All right. So right now, this is only going to kind of test one thing at a time. Yes, we have seen where we can test multiple different things at a time. Like I can say, like, hey, is num1 greater than num2? Or maybe it's doing this or it's doing that. But I don't know if we can do things at the same time. So in order to do that, we have to do what's called a compound expression. So in here, for example, if we think about mathematically, when we talk like a number, like on a number line, for example, we'll say like num1 is less than num2 is less than, let's say, 100. That, of course, would be maybe the way we write it in math. However, in computing and programming, we can't do this legally. The program can only handle kind of one of those operations at a time. It doesn't know, well, do you want me to compare num2 to less than 100 first? Or do you want me to compare num1 to num2 first? It doesn't know because there's no rules about reading left to right in that expression. So what we instead have to do is take this chunk here and break it apart. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to leave the left-hand side perfectly fine. And I'm going to then come in here, put in num2 again, and I need to put an expression in between here. Now this depends on what kind of expression we have. Now since we had num1 is less than num2, which is less than 100, this is what's known as an AND expression. All right, AND means I want to test both conditions to see if they are true. If I don't care about whether or not they're true, we can do what's called an OR expression. So I'll show that one down here. So if num1 is less than num2, or num2 is less than 100. Okay. Now let's just change these print statements real quick. So num1 is, or let's say num2 is greater than num1 or less than 100. And here, let's say num1 is less than num2. So let's just change that to num2 is greater than num1 and less than 100. All right. Of course, there's some slight difference there. As you can tell, one is an OR, one is less. If you think back to algebra with your number lines, this simply just means that pretty much everything in between these 2 points has to be true. This one, well, this is like the ones typically when you graph it, it's the shading on the line in between the 2 points. This one is like the 2 points are going out in opposite directions. This is an AND, this is an OR. So let's just see how this actually plays out when I run this program. All right, so let's just say, because we know num1 is 3, let's make num2, in this case, something like 50. All right, we got num2 is greater than num1 and less than 100, and num2 is greater than num1 or less than 100. In this case, both of these happen to be true. All right, simply because if you think about this, the way this is structured, this one, both pieces of this have to be true. Well, 3 is less than 50, and we look at this, 50 is less than 100. Well, that's true, so that works. If I look at this chunk, all right, is 3 less than 50? Yes. And technically, because that first part is true, it doesn't matter what the other part is, because with an OR, if one part is true, the whole thing is true. All right, so keeping that in mind, let's look at this now with a different numerical value. So let's say now we use -2. All right, you'll notice now we only have one value be given to us. All right, and that was num2 is greater than num1 or less than 100. Because we go to here, num1 is less than num2. Well, 3 is not less than -2. So that part is false. All right, so that would automatically, this first part, because this first part is false, well, there's no way that this, even if this was true, that this whole thing can be true because there's already a false in here. Now, with this one, well, this part right here, it's false, but because it says OR and not AND, I can go over here and say, oh, wait, -2 is less than 100, so that has to be true. And that's how we get this value right here. All right. Now, of course, you can do compound expressions with words as well. So like, for example, we had if word one is equal to computer. We could also do like last time where we had the else ifs. We can say and word one is equal to something. The problem you'll run with and on a string like this is that it would have to be both words simultaneously. So let me just go ahead and put in here equals to, let's say, technology. And let's run this. And if I put in computer, oh wait, I gotta do the number first. I almost forgot that. 5. Computer. You can see it just stops. Nothing gets printed. All right. I'm going to put a phrase in here so I don't forget about this. Please enter a number. There we go. Now, if we change this from and to an or, the advantage of doing that is it's going to allow the program to compare both of them, but instead of making sure that both have to be true, only one of them has to be true. Because if you think about it, no matter what I do with this word, because it's a string, it's just a collection of characters, there's no way it can be two words at the same time. It's not going to happen. So what I can do instead is I change this to an or, and now if I run my program, oh, I threw an S in there apparently. If I run my program, let's go ahead and type in 5, and now let's put in computer. The words are the same. The same thing will work if I run this program and I put in technology. You can see we get the same output. The words are the same. So whenever you want to do a multiple string comparison, it's always going to, like 99.99% of the time, unless it's some weird thing where you're using like ignore case or something like that, it's going to end up being an or expression, because with strings, the only way that they can be the same is with an or. All right. Otherwise, it's just not going to work, because otherwise you might as well just put the same word up there. So it'd be like computer and then computer. All right. With numbers, though, you get a lot more flexibility, so you can do an and or an or. All right. But that's enough on compound expressions. I just want you to note that you can, of course, do the exact same things that you've been doing with the else ifs. You can do here. In fact, the only other thing I want to show you today is that you can also nest expressions. So if I wanted to, let's say, if these two words are the same, then I want to do another if. You notice that this if is on the same indentation level. Then I could put an if in here and say num1. Let's just say, or not num1, num2 equals 100. We could print it's your lucky day. All right. That's about the only other thing that I haven't shown you, is just that you can nest these expressions. And of course, when they're nested, it's the exact same thing that we've been doing before. So these are your options here. You have a ton of power now with your programs in order to be able to write awesome code. So with that being said, I'm going to let you go until next time, when we will actually start getting into working with loops.